Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor podcast. Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor, podcast.
Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Devon Taylor podcast, where we have guests from all around the world tell their unique and powerful stories to not only allow their voice to be heard, but for you to leave feeling inspired. In today's episode, I'm joined by the founder and CEO of Touchstone Essentials. With over 25 years of experience in natural health, he has dedicated his career to helping people detoxify their bodies and live cleaner, more vibrant lives. Through his research and innovation in zeolite-based cellular cleansing, he's helped countless individuals reduce their toxic load and reclaim their energy from inside out. Today, we're diving into the science of cellular renewal with heavy metals, what heavy metals are and really doing to our health, and how small intentional steps can lead to massive transformations in how we feel every day. Our next guest's work bridges science and purpose, and I can't wait to unpack how his story began, what he's learned along the way, and how we can all take better care of our body we live in. So please welcome Eddie Stone. Hello.
Hi, Devon. That's so nice to meet you and have a chance to work with you on the show. We did a little work looking at your audience, and so that's a privilege to speak to everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And I know my audience is really are going to be really excited to really get to know you better in your company and what you guys are doing. So I'd really like you to just first start off. How did Touchstone Essentials begin? Where did you draw into this work and health and detoxification and all of that?
Yeah, and it's kind of like probably like a lot of people's origin stories. There's a mix of circumstances, but also some personal dynamics. And I'll say up front, I was thinking as you were giving the introduction, and you're talking about detox and heavy metals. It's not the most sexy subject, I have to admit that. But in terms of impact of health, I don't think people realize the role that it can play in the challenges in a modern world of a body burden and just the dynamics and the disruptive nature, whether we're talking about toxins that can be obesogens, which are making it more difficult for people to control weight or affect how their hormones process, or contributing to this, it's not a medical term, but this sort of thing of brain fog that people experience, right? Which I'm sure most people, like if you're fully engaged in a modern world, just sort of know what I'm talking about. So I appreciate that. I tend to think of toxins as this dirty little secret, that we don't spend a lot of time on. So for me, I had an opportunity when I was first coming out of school. I'd done some triathlons, and so I'd done a little bit of work on health and nutrition, and trying to understand what you put in your body can help, like on outcomes. And to give everybody context, I'm 62 years old today, so it's a long time ago. And over the period of years, and particularly back then, I really did appreciate, what's going in your body, whether intentional, with food that you're consuming, or either what's happening maybe with the air that you're breathing or the dynamics of your environment. And I had a real wake up call to the subject because my mom, and a young mom, she had me at a very young age. So she was kind of my buddy, Judy. And just to jump forward, she's alive and healthy today. Um, she developed what looked like to us to be somewhat of a mysterious illness. She was really vulnerable to kind of every cough and cold and flu and everything that came by. And she was losing energy and she was losing weight. And it was kind of this like, something's wrong, but we don't really know what's wrong. And took her to all the local medical facilities and things we had around us. I live in North Carolina, tremendous resource of university, hospitals and things like that. So this drug on for a couple of years. And it wasn't until someone recommended someone, frankly, they described as perhaps a quack, but we were so desperate, right? That did not turn us off from exploring it. It just turned out to be a doctor. He's located in Atlanta, Georgia, that focused on IV chelation therapies. Now, I didn't know anything about it at the time, but he saw my mom and suspected there was something going on, something causing autoimmune responses, inflammatory type issues, something in the environment. And so he put her on a therapy, pretty darn aggressive, like 6 days a week for a few weeks. Knowing what I know now, I don't know if I'd have fully agreed to that. That's a pretty aggressive and could be considered dangerous, but she responded, and she responded pretty fast. And what it turns out was she had had breast implants when she was younger, and she was having an autoimmune response to the implants and some worry about degradation of one of the implants. So did the therapy, got that out of her body, and her health really responded almost immediately. And for me, just kind of entering my career in health and nutrition, I just sort of realized, man, there's a lot of things out there beyond the obvious that can be impacting your health. And so over time, I really began to realize that toxins, and let me give that context. There's probably 100,000 man-made chemicals that are utilized in the production of consumer goods, like from your phone to your carpet, nonstick cookware,
Hmm.
petro-based chemicals that are used in the growing of food, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. There's just a lot of things out there. The dry cleaning chemicals used on your clothes. There's a lot of things out there that are just a part of modern living. I don't know that we're all ready to give it up, right? But there's a lot of things out there that haven't ever really been fully tested on people. The good news is that the human body is really durable, and the majority of people do not show acute symptoms. Now, we probably all know someone that's sort of allergic to everything,
Yeah.
and it shows up in their skin and even headache and nausea and things like this. But more and more, what we realize in the modern world is that there's an accumulation of these things over time because they're simply not found in nature, and we haven't evolved to the point where we easily deal with them. So you talk about cadmium, lead, mercury, volatile organics. And when I say lead, right? Most people know and can think back to maybe the Flint, Michigan issue, but
Mhm.
other issues with lead paints. We kind of know about that one, but it's a broad issue and one that I believe we should pay attention to.
Absolutely. And even as you were saying it, before we started recording, I was saying, I had my little journey with detoxifying and kind of figuring it out on my own. And a lot of it had to do with my gut, I would say. I would have stomach aches or unexplained pains after I would eat and really didn't know what it was. And as I did research on my own, I realized that, heavy metals were in a lot of our foods. And so, with that being known, your what is your opinion on that? With heavy metals being in the majority of the foods, what can we do as people to try to combat that?
Well, the food supply is definitely something that deserves an examination. And if you look at how we eat, at least in the US, but this is really pretty typical of the developed parts of the world, we tend to eat highly focused on convenience and then sort of price and then taste, which doesn't sound like the right thing. And somewhere in the top six is like nutrition, which is just, I don't know, how we got here. But the bottom line is the cleaner you can eat, the better. And so the first thing is if you think about ultra processed foods, right? Whether you're talking about all the dyes and the chemicals and artificial sweeteners or whatever it happens to be, all of those things in their manufacturing uh, environments, right, just do not bring into the body a set of chemicals it knows how to recognize. If you look at conventionally grown foods as opposed to, say, certified organic, setting aside if there's a debate about nutrition, well, we know those things are more prone to have residue associated with um, insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, and even heavy metals. The state of California is the Prop 65 state. And there are some challenges with Prop 65 about its relevance, say if you're driving in a parking garage or things like that where it's labeled. But when you talk about food, I do believe consumers deserve to know what foods are most likely to contain heavy metals in them, because I think the consumer can have some awareness, right? And help
Yeah.
them with their discretionary decision making. So for me, if I can buy organic, all things being equal, I will. One, I do believe it's healthier from the dynamics we talked about and including nutrition. But two, anything I can do to support an economy where we're not so focused on petro-based chemicals or otherwise to grow the food supply. I'm not trying to get into the debate about well, can we grow enough food for 7 billion people on the planet and these types of things? But we do know that organic practices, whether it's how the soil is turned, crop rotation, otherwise, makes communities where food is grown safer and healthier for families. So when you think about farmers, the kids that work on the farm, farm workers, you think about those communities, right? If you're spraying these things in the air, right? There's no way to escape that getting in everybody's environment. It gets into the water supply, it gets into the dirt. And oftentimes these chemicals have incredibly long half-lives. So they literally sort of last forever, right? DDT, which was banned in the 70s, is still found in cord blood today. And
Wow.
so when we look at these things, I try to avoid foods that are most likely or highly likely to have problems with heavy metals. We actually have a dirty dozen printed on our website. I think it's the FDA that prints a dirty dozen list on an annual basis. Unfortunately, some things like strawberry, the way that they respond to chemicals and hold into them in their skin. So I do
Oh,
pay attention, and I think it's important to do so.
yeah, I love strawberries too. That's that's good to know. And I think most people when they hear the word detox, they think of foods or, quick fixes to try to help their body alleviate whatever it is, that's going on. But I know you guys have a different approach. Can you kind of explain your guys' approach and how did science shape that vision?
Sure. So I'll give you a couple ways. One, let's separate a cleanse from detox, right? Oftentimes, when we think of a cleanse, we're just talking about mostly digestive health, gut, which is important, right? The health of your gut, your biome, gut brain connections, all these kind of dynamics. So a lot of your immune system and its function comes out of the gut. I think over half your serotonin for most people's coming out of your gut, so it can affect mood and other dynamics. So that's one thing. And when you think about that, if a person has adequate amounts of fiber in their diet, which is hard to get to, I think the average person gets like 7, 8 grams a day and need about 35 or 40. If you consider that, or you consider other things that people are eating, ultra processed versus more straight up fruits, vegetables, or even meats, right? Things are just less processed. You can deal with that. But when you talk about heavy metals, particularly cadmium, lead, mercury, the whole list that's out there, those get so rooted in our system. You need something that encourages them to evacuate. And so we use something called a zeolite. And zeolites are very much a known quantity. They have GRAS status in the United States, which means it's generally recognized as safe by the FDA, which means it's been around a long time, consumed by human beings a long time, with no discernible contraindications. In our case, it's a milled zeolite called clinoptilolite, which is what fits the GRAS status of the FDA. We have a proprietary process to prep it. It's clean out of the ground. We get it here in the United States. It's already Prop 65 compliant, but we prep it so it works better, and then we mill it to a certain size. So we have one for cellular health, which is what you were describing, and one to aid the gut in detox and also just general cleanse. And so it's important to take a two-pronged approach because what works in the gut doesn't necessarily work in the cells. We choose this strategy because it's gentle and easy. So some of the Herxheimer impacts, headaches, other dynamics you think with a cleanse aren't a part of the feedback and what we get with zeolites. We've been selling zeolites for close to 14 years. I've been working with them directly myself and part of my career since 2005. And so they're gentle. If they're the proper product, natural, not synthetic, they're gentle and easy for the system to maintain. And so it's just an encouraging detox on a daily basis. It works by proximity. So it's a hardened crystal structure. So zeolites grow when playa lake or salt water collides with lava, ash, or lava. That's how they grow. And they have an interesting structure. If you looked at them under a microscope, they almost look like Swiss cheese. And that's because they have these channels or tunnels that maintain a negative charge. May not sound like it means anything, but the heavy metals we're talking about have a positive charge. And so as this is moving throughout your body and comes in proximity to one another, they literally come together like the north end and the south end of a magnet. And once bound, the zeolite will take that out of your body, assuming sort of normal renal and bowel, bowel function, maybe 4 to 6 hours. And that's important because a zeolite is not an essential mineral, so your body won't hold on to it. So it's really this sort of eloquent, perfect dynamic of supporting detoxification. And I'll give you right up front my opinion on this. People will say, well, do I do this one time? Your exposure to the things I'm describing does not go away on a daily basis. And unfortunately, you tend to think, well, I can't see the pollution or I don't live in a big city. I can't smell anything acrid. I'm probably okay. Unfortunately, even in rural areas, maybe worse sometimes because of farming, it's just out there and the exposure continues. And so I think of it just like I want good nutrition in my body. My strategy is to get the bad stuff out on a
Yeah.
daily basis, put the good stuff in. And that's really one of these stacks we have in sort of stacking health habits and things that would not only have an impact on longevity, which is kind of one thing, but on quality of life right now and in this moment. I just find so many people are sort of sick and tired of being sick and tired, and heavy metals and environmental pollution, they're playing a role in that feeling that you have.
And for people that don't understand what heavy metals are specifically, if you could, or how they build up in the body, I'd like for you to explain it. But I also wanted to note that I didn't realize, uh, and I could be wrong on this, that heavy metals come in the form of pollution as well. I thought it was just what we were eating. I didn't realize that it was what we were breathing as well. So that's something that I just learned today. But
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of a way to think about this. Now, you're a young man, so I don't know that you would know much about this, but when I grew up, gasoline still had lead in it, right? Which
mm,
seems like a little foreign idea now, but just think about the millions of cars running around in the world and they're burning gasoline with lead in it. That all becomes a part of their exhaust emissions. And so that's quite literally, if you think about cities back in the day where you saw that yellow haze or trapped valleys like Salt Lake City now, part of that was automobile exhaust, or even when we talk about coal burning power plants, those emissions have heavy metals in them. When you hear about coal ash, which is a down regulated burn off coming from burning coal, that's incredibly toxic, filled with heavy metals. So anytime we talk about the burning of fossil fuel or the manufacturing of chemicals, there's going to be heavy metals involved in that environment. Even arsenic is in that category of a heavy metal. When they go into your body, there's all kinds of ways that can play a really insidious role in your health. For example, they can be disruptive with how calcium binds and forms the bond or the strength of your bone structure. So you can have people that literally have fragile bones because their body's inability to really manage how heavy metals are disruptive in that regard. Things like mercury can disrupt the performance of your brain. So they are neurotoxic, which really, generally speaking, is what we think of almost all heavy metals. Things like cadmium, which are common to the burning of a cigarette or any sort of ash-based combustible like that that we're exposed to, right? All of those are hormonally disruptive and can even serve, particularly combined with volatile organics, as obesogens, which simply means once they get into the cell structure, they make it very difficult for the body to break down a fat cell, burn it off. And so weight control becomes a more difficult dynamic. We can look at clusters of people in and around petroleum processing facilities, and you can see that dynamic where even on caloric restriction and other things associated with controlling weight, there's this greater difficulty because of the obesogens that sort of are in their bodies. And the body is acting sort of as a protective um, steward of what's in it because it says, hey, don't burn that fat cell. We've sequestered that heavy metal in there. And so if you burn it off, it's then free released into the system to wreak havoc in other ways. So whether it's talking about lead and how it can erode the IQ, not just of children, right? That's the first alarm bell we had when we heard about Flint, Michigan, is all these kids exposed to that drinking water, but it's adults as well. We know it can play a role even in the ability of what they call executive function, which is where adults can manage themselves, decision making, some of these things you take for granted when your mind is working properly, right? All of a sudden, if you're clouded or struggling because you've got these other things impacting brain function, neurotransmission, things of this kind, all of these things can play a role in even how we behave, just more or less not even realizing it. So I, I've had people say, Eddie, man, that's alarming. It should be, right? If your car, um, if your car has been, you've been running it for a while with no maintenance, right? You don't pay attention getting the oil change like you should, oil filters, whatever, tune-ups, which are different today's world than it used to be. Bottom
Yeah.
line is you take your car in, all of a sudden things running like new again, right? Your body's the same way. And I worry that people get so far away from their best self that they don't realize the impact of these things on performance unless it's an acute problem, right? But it's obvious. But I'm more worried about the body burden. So all of a sudden, right, you're in your 40s, you're in your 50s, which should be tremendously positive years of your life. And you don't realize it because you're sick and tired. You don't have the energy that you used to. You don't leap out of bed. You kind of throw your feet over and follow gravity to a coffee pot or an energy drink, right? And there's a lot of things involved there, but one of them is the exposure to pollutants and heavy metals.
Wow. Yeah, and that was my first thought, that this should be scary, or at least it was scary to me hearing it. So hearing all of the negative effects, what have been the most surprising transformations you've witnessed from people who have gone through your programs?
There's a variety of great things, and I'll say that you always look for people that perhaps could have some blood work, right? So you've got folks that are really on an extreme side of issues associated with heavy metals and environmental pollutants. And so, we've had people send us blood work where they were high on lead or cadmium or mercury or something, in addition to other lifestyle changes, which we encourage. They attribute also using our product to seeing a reduction at later blood work time or hair samples, right? So we'd love to see that. And we're not a drug, so we're not trying to couch this as a pharmaceutical. It's just like if you add fiber to your diet, there's positive dynamics that are going to come from that. But we also hear people, and this is nice. I tell everybody, it takes a long time to get to where you are in life, right? Lifetime of habits and behavior. I encourage them not to seek answers overnight, right? So I don't want anybody to think I'm going to use this today and tomorrow wake up different minded. I try to get people, give yourself a chance, give yourself 90 days. I'd love 150. But it's not infrequent that we hear people that say within about 10 days, say, you know what, I don't know what it is. I've just got a little more clarity, a little more mental energy, a little more concentration. And the word people use all the time is brain fog. I don't seem to have the same brain fog or sluggishness that I had. And at the same time, they describe sleeping better, which will also mean you've got a little more energy, a little better rested. You're probably going to have a better mental day anyway. So this is sort of the first dynamics that we hear is this just, I feel better. I feel stronger. A lot of the people we've worked with now for over a decade, well over 1 million people have consumed the product. And they talk about just infrequency of, suffering from common coughs, colds, flus, things like that. So they just feel like they're in a better place from an immune standpoint, which stands to reason, right? Your immune system is a product of your lifestyle and other issues. And the better you treat your body, the more likely you are, it's not guaranteed, but the more likely you are to have a more robust immune system, whether we're dealing with difficult issues such as chronic or degenerative diseases or just everyday types of issues. And so people feel better and they report that to us frequently. And that's what we get excited about, sort of the energy, the currency, sort of that drives us on a daily basis.
And I was gonna say, how does that make you feel? Knowing that there's such a dark, side to what heavy metals, what our pollution is doing to our body. But here you guys are, helping transform people. What is that feeling like when you hear the transformation? Like, let's say after maybe 10 days.
Yeah, it's exciting, right? It's what gets you up in the morning, right? I've been doing this a long time, and I've enjoyed enough success in life that really isn't, the primary motivator that you're involved with. It's when you talk to people, light bulb goes off, somebody comes back and says, I was really kind of struggling with this, didn't know quite how to describe what was going on. And they just express an appreciation. And then the continued use, right, is this confirmation that there's a real value. What we've learned is that, you know, people are struggling enough, they'll try almost anything one time, right? You can get desperate, and anybody listening to us that's ever tried to deal with weight, and you just know these ups and down cycles, and you're just this thing and that thing. And sometimes you try stuff and go, this can't possibly work, but I'm damn sure gonna give it a go, right? And so when we see these continued uses, and we sell these products in some 50 countries, right? So it isn't just the United States, right? There's a lot of places around the world where people have found these things are useful tools, and that's how I see them. I'm in the supplement business, but I take it at that word, right? It's a supplement to the best people can do for themselves, and I hope every day they're learning to do more, right? Stacking sort of knowledge and habits so they get the best outcome they can. I think of supplements as a tool, bridge the gap between where you are with your diet or where you are with sort of your health conditions to get you to where you want to be. I'm my primary advocacy in life is for someone to be them best selves, right? To live to the fullest measure of their potential. This is one part of that process, and we get excited to see it.
Yeah. And have there been any misconceptions you guys have come across that you would like to kind of debunk or let people know? I mean, obviously you mentioned, like a supplement, but the way I see it is, because I've done my research too, I see it as an opportunity to really help my body. But, what
Yeah,
are,
you always find, particularly online, and what I have found, there are accounts or people that they're not accountable, right? You don't really know who they are. You don't really know where they live or things like that. And so they spout opinions as though they're an authority. And so you see that, and I know it makes us all jaded and less likely to take chances on ourselves. And there's just so much information to filter through. So I worry about noise sometimes. Zeolites are very much a known quantity. Naturally mined clenoptilolite from the United States with grass status is kind of as safe as you can look at for something for a person to try and use. Yet there are people out there that say, oh, there's still questions. They're not. They're not looking at peer-reviewed science or research from anywhere on this globe to suggest that. But it's just maybe a part of their identity. Luckily for us, that's not much noise, but I do see that noise out there, and I just find that oftentimes the source is someone's not willing to do something for themselves. And listen, I'd love for you to use our products, but if someone doesn't, that's okay. If you left this and you're just a little more aware of the role of environmental pollutants, heavy metals, volatile organics, particularly, right? So don't keep the door closed in the bathroom when you're using cleansers in the bathroom, right? If you could wear a simple mask, right, to just limit that exposure. There's all these little nuances so that you can give your body a better sort of fighting chance. Here, I'll give you a little insight. Now, maybe this is because I'm 62. Okay. So I think about this a little more. But if you look at our population, we've sort of learned that you can do just about anything to the human body for about 45 or 50, 55 years, right? You could have almost any habit, any bad habits you can think of, just sort of not pay attention to these things and be asleep at the wheel. But somewhere between 55 and 65, statistically speaking, at that heart attack you didn't see coming, but of course you should have, or that diagnosis of cancer or type 2 diabetes, all these things that we all sort of fear hearing a physician or someone say to us, right? We know statistically, the better your dietary habits, the more controlled your weight is, the more movement and exercise you have, that really is less likely to happen 55 to 65. All of a sudden, it's 55 to 45 to 55. It's all of a sudden 55, 65 or more. And we know that generally speaking, once humans get to about 50, 75 years of age, there's this great fall off on both our mental abilities as well as physical. In some cases, as much as 50%. They may not have a disease, right? But we know that the greater the health habits are that someone cultivates over time, and there's a list of them, right? Most of them are pretty obvious. That 75 can push out to 80 or 85. That's my focus, right? I'd love to live as long as possible, but I'm more about living the years I have and encouraging other people to think the same way. I think the human body is such a gift to have. You just get one chance at it. You just get one body. There's not another one waiting. I know people think gene splicing and all these other things are going to come. I think so too. I'm just not sure they're going to come in time for the next, 35 or 40 years, right? That's a kind of a little bit fanciful to say, even with all the AI or quantum computing or all the other stuff. So I just try to get people to invest in themselves with their habits, behaviors, decision making. Hey, if it makes sense to add some supplements to aid the outcomes, that's what someone like our company is here for.
And I would say, even if if they're watching the video version of this podcast, you do not look your age. You look
Oh,
much
thank you.
younger. So even when you said that, I was like, what? Because you have so
Thank
much
you.
energy. You look very vibrant and shining. Like, what is the thing you're most proud of with this product when it comes to that? Like, obviously, I can tell, in your physique that it's making a difference. But what would you say you're most proud of?
Well, my pride is just the volume of people that have access to it and what we've been able to bring to them from an education standpoint. We're talking about our zeolite today, but our nutritional supplements are all made from whole fruits and vegetables, which is a stark difference that's different than 99% of the supplements being sold, no matter the price. And that's because we believe you've got to look at things in the whole and not sort of individual or synthesized ingredients. And so the vast majority of supplements out there, they're just a synthesized portion of an ingredient and or petroleum mimic. It can even say natural on the label when it does that. So for example, you see vitamin C and next to it, it says ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid is just the outer ring of the vitamin C molecule. There's 7 other things that are missing. That's far different than vitamin C, say, coming from acerola cherry in a complete form. And it's just a different dynamic in how that is bioavailable to the body and the work that it has to do. And so we're really have a great deal of pride of being able to go out and say to the public, hey, listen, let's just show you some facts. Let's just give you some information so you become a more educated consumer. Even if it doesn't wind up with them being involved with us, that educated consumer is going to push an economy in a dynamic where supplements have to be smarter and really meet the measure of what people are looking for. Most people buying supplements, I think, oh, I'm buying a bottle of fresh fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, that's not true. And so we have a lot of pride in that. We're a B corporation. We do some other stuff. We believe it's important to be good stewards and a part of the community. And so those are the things that we feel best about, because it's for us, it's not just an audience or a set of customers. We like to think of them as a part of our own community.
And I think that's beautiful. The ultimate goal. So anyone that's listening, if they want to take steps to living a more cleaner life, what advice would you give them?
Well, let's do a couple of things. One, with your permission, I'd love to give you a link for your show notes to give people a discount if they want to try our detox.
Absolutely. I think that would
It'd
be
be
a
our
great
privilege.
idea.
And
Yeah,
everything comes unconditionally money back guaranteed. We also have, I think, close to 60,000 5-star reviews. So we're a known quantity in that regard. I'll tell you, the first thing I encourage people to do is just take a couple minutes to just think about where you're at and where you'd like to be. Are there 2 or 3 things currently that you say, you know what, life would be better if I slept better, or throughout the day I had more sustained energy, or I were more regular? Right? There's a lot of things going on that maybe people don't talk about, or it seems indelicate. There's a lot of stuff that affects how we feel, how excited we are. If you get out of the shower and look in the mirror and you don't feel so great about that, what is it that you don't feel great about? Right? Have things shifted from up here to down here? Has it gone this way? What's happened that's maybe getting in the way of the fullest confidence you can have? We need to go through life's hard enough. You need to try to have some confidence when you go through it. And so I tell people, let's think about what the struggle is or what the pain point is, and then we can consider what do we need to do. One of the first things is just consider what you're eating. If most of what a person eats is ultra processed food prepared outside of the home, can you switch it up so there's at least one meal that's being made from something that's kind of seems basic or stock or whatever that might be for you. There's a fruits and vegetables involved, just less processed. I'm not trying to get someone to change everything. I'd love for you to just greatly limit the amount of ultra processed food, but most people are buying that because of lifestyle and they just need it because life is so busy. So let's do that. Can you look at how much sugar you're consuming and just somehow lower that a little bit, right? Can you look at the stress in your life and try to lower the temperature a little bit? Do you have movement? This is one of the bigger issues I don't think people really pay attention to. You can tend to think of exercise kind of one way or the other. I hate it or I like it. If you don't like it, I'm not going to try to convince you to like it because you just reduce the hate enough that you move some every day. For example, if you find a way sort of almost immediately after a meal to have some movement instead of moving from the table to the couch for 15 or 20 minutes, could be doing the dishes, taking out the garbage, just something where you are just in motion for 15 or 20, or go for a walk, do the dishes afterwards. The impact of blood sugar or the glucose that ran up after your meal is dramatically reduced, lowering your risk of type 2 diabetes and aiding in the control of health. Can you drink more water? If most of what you're drinking is either artificially sweetened or sweetened with sugar, can you just have some portion of it? A tea, a green tea that doesn't have sugar added or anything like just something so you've got a chance for your kidney and your liver to process something that's not manufactured, right? And so then we can talk about the supplements as that meets somebody's budget and also want to get a little more aggressive. I believe everybody on this within listening range to us, if they used our Pure Body Extra, would feel better within 30 days, but there may be steps they want to take first, right? And so you just got to be willing to invest in self-care. I can't say that enough, and I'm saying it to all the guys in the audience too. They tend to want to say, "Oh, that's something my wife or my girlfriend or my daughter or somebody else talks about." That's just BS.
Mm.
Everybody can benefit from a little self-care, right? Life's a little better if you just take a few moments, manage some stress, pay attention to your food, get a little movement, man. There's a lot of life in front of us all. Let's just get the most out of it.
I hear that. Absolutely. And you know, when I was doing research about you and your company, I was looking on the website and there was a blog that had a lot of different tips, different, life examples that people could use and apply. So I really thought that was really beautiful that you guys really aren't just advertising a product, you're advertising like a lifestyle, and really trying to help people make better decisions to build upon their health. um, what keeps you inspired to do this?
Just a lot of people out there not living their best life. You just listen a little bit to the community and the people around you, and just seems like a lot of people are searching. A lot of it we can't take care of, right? Whatever they're searching, but if I can help them perhaps feel better, then maybe they find that gear or that energy to address what their other concerns are. There's just so much noise and acrimony and things like that. So we're trying to play our role with help people find their best health, and maybe some of those other things will come together at the same time.
Yeah, I've been asking a lot of the doctors that I've had on and leading experts in the health and wellness field where they feel the future of it all is going. So I kind of wanted to ask you, where do you see science and holistic health meeting in the next decade or so?
I think there's I wish I had a better term for it, but I think there's more of a back to basics that people are embracing, a little more ownership of it. I mean, we all see from a political standpoint the role that big businesses can play in influencing policy. And I mean, this is not what I'm not an expert, right? Observations, and this is not what this show is about. But if you look at the impact of big business on, say, health insurance, or politics on health insurance, or the impact of big food on policies associated with nutrition labels, other things, subsidies to farms, or how it affects SNAP. If you look at big pharma, and the influence that plays on prescription reimbursements, cost. I mean, there's just all these things that I don't know all the answers. I have some opinions, but what I do know is don't believe on a macro level I'm going to be able to affect that as just Eddie Stone citizen of North Carolina. Don't I just, I don't. What it can affect is me and the people around me. And so if I don't like some of those dynamics, what I can do is try to focus on my health so I don't become dependent upon it. I appreciate Western medicine and having access to things if I'm in a crisis or have a disease and all of a sudden there's a cure, right? Something like that. I appreciate that all that, but the more I can do so that I have some control of my outcomes, the better. And I want to teach my 2 kids that. I wanna share that with my wife and my family so that I become a little more independent and a little less influenced unless I want to be. And, I just think we tend to fall into a role, "Well, I can't do anything about it, so I'm just gonna go along in the flow of the river with them." And I promise you, if you don't have a plan for yourself, you just become a part of somebody else's plan. These are
Mm,
big, powerful businesses that are very difficult to fight. In some cases, they do good stuff, but in other cases, I don't think so. And
mm.
so I just try to think about what is it that we can have some self-control over and encourage that. That's where
That was a word. What was that? I'm sorry?
I think that's where the future's coming. I mean, I think you get sick and tired of it, and all of a sudden you're like, "You know what? I'm gonna seize back my control."
I love that though. That was a word. If you don't have a plan, you become part of somebody else's. Wow, that was powerful.
Thank you.
And so that leads me into my next question. How do you define success now then? Is it your business growth? Is it the impact? Or is it something deeper for you?
People. I mean, it really comes down to people. That's where I get my energy from. Now, we're a for-profit business, and I appreciate that, but I have a viewpoint that if you operate with efficiently and you offer value to the public, right, you're gonna find an audience of some size. And being able to say we're a part of things in 50 some countries, right, that's pretty good. That feels good. But it's just the individual persons or the groups of people that you meet. I was at an event not too long ago, and there was a group that had flown in from, Norway. I've never been to Norway. But they had flown in from Norway's, probably 14, 15, 16 of them because they wanted to we were basically having a doctor's panel and some professionals were speaking about the products. And I looked at that and I thought, I grew up in North Carolina. I would have never imagined being a part of something with a reach that broad. And next thing you know, with enthusiasm on their own dime, their own expense, these folks have decided to fly into the States to kind of hear some of the work we're doing and what that could mean to them. And I thought, you know what, that's fun, right?
Mm,
That says somewhere someone's being reached and touched by it, and hard to think of something more energizing and fulfilling than that.
yeah, that's beautiful. I think one of the biggest impacts anyone can make is seeing your reach go across the world. In a new place, like you said, someone you've never been. Yeah, that's truly inspiring. I only have a few more questions, but before I let you
Yeah.
go, I kind of wanted to know what's one piece of wisdom you want every listener to take away about taking ownership of their health.
That skepticism is healthy, but don't let it get in the way. At some point, pull the trigger. It's got a guarantee. You have nothing to lose, right? And why not start now? I'm really not a fan, like at the end of the year, all right, I'm gonna start it all New Year's Day. Ah, why not now? Because there'll
Mhm.
be just something that gets in the way on New Year's Day, right? So I'm just living this moment, and the minute someone feels an inspiration to do something, just do it then, because there's so many dang distractions that are gonna get in the way tomorrow. And if it was good enough for you to think about, respect yourself, and let's do it now, right? Just start somewhere. I don't care where it is. Just start somewhere.
Mm, thank you. Yeah, I know that's going to inspire the next person to take the right next step. And I think that's what my purpose here on this platform is to do, is to help people realize that there's so many people like you that are taking that extra step, building businesses and actually changing the world. It's much more in reach than I think people actually give themselves credit for. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, but before I let you go, where can we find you? Your website? I know you said you'll leave a discount code. I'll put that in the show notes below and everything else. But just before you leave, I'd like for you to let everyone know.
Yeah. So we can be found at thegoodinside.com. I tell everybody to look for the link in the show notes because it'll have a coupon. If you just go straight to the site, you won't have access to the coupon. And so if you'll just look for that. And like you described on the blog and stuff, there's a ton of information, right? So grab a cup of coffee or whatever it is you need, take a minute and look for some things that maybe are on subjects that you're looking to get better at or more educated on. There's a lot of great stuff there beyond just, what we offer. Sounds silly, but educate yourself on greens.
Mm.
There's just a few things out there that have these demonstrable impacts. Getting more fiber in your diet. Again, not very sexy, but you can read about that. And there's good supplements out there. We have one I think that's really great, but do something to get more. You can lower your chances of dying by double digits by just increasing the amount of fiber in your diet. Just think about that. What a deal. Just a little more fiber. Adding greens, particularly cruciferous fruits and vegetables to your diet can reduce by double digits your risk of dying of a variety of diseases, including cancer. Those are really simple and kind of within our grasp, right? And so the power of knowledge is just almost unending,
Mm.
right? And so there's a great saying I love about education. It's a little old, but it says, um, "Listen to dead people." And what it means is to read about people that have gone before. Things like fiber and greens, man. We've been talking about this for nearly 100 years, right? It's not a fad. It's just there. You can read books and things of people that have lived exemplary, long, healthy lives about the impact of things like that. So just educate yourself and try to find a little bit of excitement about adding these things to your health plan.
Yeah. I definitely need to add more fiber. And after this conversation, I think I'm going to go get me some greens. Thank
Fantastic.
you, Eddie Stone, again, for being a guest, for being here, for enlightening us, for offering the discount. That's going to be great. I know my audience will truly love that. And hopefully, everyone will check out the website and see what fits for them. But thank you again, Eddie. I truly appreciate you being here.
Thank you,
Of
Devon.
course. Until next time, guys. See you later.
Hey guys, it's Icarus here,
And Amelia.
and I'm here to tell you if you'd like to join our brand new adventure. Go to DevonTaylorAuthor.com to learn more.
And check out the cool items like the new bucket hat.
Yeah, and so much more. See you guys there.